McClean was founded 200 years ago to provide better care for the people of Greater Boston. And while that has continued as a central element of our mission, it's incredible to consider how the scope and scale of that mandate has evolved over 2 centuries. The visionary citizens of Boston circa 1811 came together in recognition that they needed a center for health care to meet the needs of the Greater Boston area.
The Reverend John Bartlett enlisted the help of 2 physicians, James Jackson and John Collins Warren, and they wrote a letter to the well-to-do people in Boston to try and raise some money, and that was the beginning.
That was the basis for creating both the Massachusetts General Hospital and the McClean Asylum. So from the very start, there was a recognition that they needed a special hospital to care for those with psychiatric illness. The original structure went up in Charlestown, and that's where McClean was initially founded. There were not many options for care for people suffering from psychiatric illness. McClean was a place that offered moral treatment, support, empathy, and compassion.
Basically, the idea had been moved from the point of view that insanity was really being sort of inhabited by the devil, that there was the idea of looking at it as an illness. And the kinder you were, that would help people to get better. The impulse was providing good care, and in a way that has continued throughout the history of the hospital for 200 years.
The tradition here has always been focused on the patient and how are we going to best alleviate this patient's suffering. That's been always the core, and you can see it in every, historic document and everything that's referenced in terms of the people who've worked here over time.
In the 1800s, there was a deterioration of the environment in Charlestown. There was slaughterhouses, there was pollution. It became an unpleasant place.
As that area became more industrialized and it was important for the asylum to exist in a bucolic setting, there was a decision made to move McClean. And with the help of Frederick Law Olmsted, a beautiful new setting on Belmont Hill had been identified. And in the late 1890s, the new McClean campus was constructed.
Over the past century, people who were running McClean realized that the way to make the best impact and improve the lives of people who are struggling with mental illness is not just to have an excellent clinical program, but actually train the next generation of clinicians and researchers, and also have an active research program focused on the needs of the mentally ill.
We have 3 intermingled missions: patient care, education and training, and research. And those 3 things in McClean Hospital are interwoven in such a way that they are inextricable.
The broad scope of services is just so vast. We have specialized programs here at the Belmont campus. We have inpatient and partial and residential programs at McClean Southeast and Brockton and beyond out to the western part of the state as well.
This is really critical to sort of a continuum of care, providing care at whatever level that an individual patient needs.
15 years ago, I got a call that a son had tried to take his life, and they were trying to save his life, which of course was the most shocking event in my life, something that as a mother you never hope to have to encounter. McClean played a large role in getting our son to where he is now. They taught him and they taught us how to lead his life and how to be a member of society again.
McClean for families in need means a community of professionals who actually care about the outcome. My family is extremely grateful to the wonderful team at McClean for specifically helping my family migrate through and come out of a very traumatic experience. It was so much uncertainty, but there was great comfort in knowing that we had the care at McClean to help guide us through. Clinical care at McClean is founded on extremely talented and committed professionals. You're dealing with the best.
Psychiatry is a field where already we have some effective treatments. On the other hand, there are many people for whom the existing treatments are not sufficient and they continue to suffer. And research is our best investment for the future to develop even better treatments. Part of what makes McClean so special is that we have a marvelous commitment to basic research, including benchtop work and animal research, but also some of the emerging tools in neuroscience, such as brain imaging.
The ability to use neuroimaging techniques, which primarily are non-invasive, to identify specific areas of the brain that might be responsive to individual therapeutic agents will perhaps revolutionize the way we treat patients.
This field is at a very critical point in its history. There's no precedent for what's taking place today in the field of neuroscience, particularly as it relates to the psychiatric disorders. We now have technology that's unprecedented in its ability to give us a window which we can understand the brain better.
We're that much closer to understanding how we can help people. There are as many research projects here at McClean as there are people, and they're all really focused on the same goal, which is to improve the quality of individuals' lives. That's the point.
McClean has a long-standing tradition of bringing together the best trainees who want to dedicate their careers to understanding mental illness and taking care of the mentally ill. In a sense, the key thing that has sustained McClean over the decades is the commitment to the training and to education, because research has changed over time. Some of the early things that were being done are no longer being done. Certain clinical problems are no longer really big problems the way they used to be. But the thing that actually stays constant is part of the mission that trains the next generation of people.
As residents, we get a unique blend of the history of psychiatry and all the traditions that are worth preserving, and that's fully combined with a look to the 21st and 22nd century. McClean blends the past and the present and the future in a way that I think no other institution does.
People around the world think of McClean as the premier place to come for clinical care, to participate in the research and the training. People seek to be here, and it is the premier institution in the United States, and if not worldwide.
I didn't know that I was bipolar, but I was having major manic swings. I live in mania opposed to depression. You know, during those times you're very creative, but your mind just goes so fast, and I couldn't sleep, and so self-medicating myself to try and control those thoughts. A lot of paranoia at the time. You know, my life was insane.
I was diagnosed with schizophrenia at age 21. I was having visual hallucinations. I was hearing voices. I thought there were cameras in my apartment, and it was very similar to the film A Beautiful Mind about John Nash. I mean, I could just visualize these things that weren't real, that were happening around me. It was very frightening. It was a very scary time.
We're living in a world where many people suffer with mental illness, and the impact on themselves and their families and their surroundings is really incalculable.
Mental illness is a very common phenomenon. It's something that strikes most people or their families or close friends. Whether it be addiction, anxiety, an eating disorder, or post-traumatic stress. We all work with people, we all know people, we all love people who have mental illnesses.
Following my manic episodes, I had hit a major depression where I had thoughts of suicide, and that's when I reached out for help, and that's when I decided to come up here.
It's so critical that in one place we have that highest level of expertise in each of the areas where someone might need help. And in a place like McClean, we're progressively able to bring those different aspects of expertise together to really surround the patient and hold them.
I was scared. You know, I was really scared, but I immediately sat down with their treatment team, and I knew that everything was going to be okay. And everybody immediately welcomed me in and didn't seem to look at me like I was crazy or different, and that's always how I felt. Like people thought knew something was wrong with me, and they just had no hope for me. These people had hope for me.
Having a mental illness, it's one of the most alienating things that can happen to a person. I was basically told to keep my expectations low about what I could achieve. And for a long period of time, that was true. You know, I was in and out of hospitals, in and out of day programs. And it really wasn't until I became a member at Waverly Place that I found stability, that I found normalcy. You don't feel you're being judged or evaluated. I love Waverly Place. I just love it. I love what they do for me. I view myself now as having recovered from my illness.
Compassionate care is the act of putting yourself in the patient's place, in trying to imagine what it would feel like. We care deeply about the patients. I think that we struggle every day with what's the right thing to do, and our goal is pretty much the same.
Someone who gets optimal treatment can actually often return to an incredibly high level of functioning and be a very productive, independent person in the community. And it's very gratifying to be able to work with families and with patients because you are able to help people live out a very full life.
A lot of places take good care of people. A lot of places have their heart in it. McClean is unique in being all psychiatry all the time. We are fortunate to have this unique focus that allows us to do it at a different depth. We have wonderful colleagues around the country and around the world who have committed their lives to better understanding the causes to mental illness and determining what really works in the way of treatment. So we're not unique in that way, but we're amongst a small cast of characters around the world. And then when you say that we function in a place that has made equal commitment to care, to education, and to research, we become more rare yet. And then when you say that we do it solely in the psychiatric realm and provide care across all age groups, from the oldest to the youngest, at every level of care, you're getting down to that which exists only here.
I feel extremely hopeful and energized. I believe that McClean is positioned in terms of its leadership, its team, its fundamental values to really contribute significantly to advancing mental health.
McClean has saved my life. I had no hope. I was in despair. I was at the end of my road, and McClean brought me to a place that now I'm happy and I have hope for the future. More than giving me a chance to live, they've taught me how to live, and that life is good. You know, life wasn't good before.
A week does not go by that there aren't very personal letters from individuals who will talk about how their own life was fundamentally changed by a McClean experience, or how grateful they are to us for having saved a member of their family, as they would put it. And there are really few things more gratifying. You know, the overall scale and complexity of an institution like this, it is easy to be drawn into getting lost at the macro level, when in fact the mission of the place, the signature of the place, is how we care for each individual patient and their families. 2 centuries ago, the people of Boston had the wisdom and the commitment to recognize the importance of having state-of-the-art psychiatric care. And I think we all feel the awesome responsibility for continuing the incredible tradition that McClean has. That responsibility is also right alongside the awesome responsibility of caring for each individual patient. You know, there's no greater responsibility than that.